Well, let's talk a little bit about guys that are going to be on the field this fall, some freshmen that are coming in as true freshmen, and some of the expectations that we might have for them. So I thought a cool way to go through this exercise, and we'll kind of highlight the four main guys on this recruiting class that are going to have a bigger impact
Hmm.
on the field. And I thought the best way to go about that is let's go back in history a little bit. Let's take a look at some similar players at similar positions that also played a lot as freshmen and say, hey, are they going to do more or less than that type of player? What is our benchmark for, hey, how effective are they? And so I think a good
Hmm.
place to start would be with Jacquez Petaway. We just talked about the wide receiver room and how there's a lot of opportunity there. Some guys that maybe didn't contribute last year or weren't even on the team last year are going to have the opportunity to take a starting role, become a guy, become someone that is going to be a major piece of this offense. So
Hmm.
with Jacquez Petaway, I thought the best comparison, and there's no comparison really at all to the style of play or anything like that. It's just a production here. And I thought a good person to go back to was Marvin Mims, a guy that had a lot of success in his true freshman year in 2020. He had 610 yards as a freshman that year. He had nine touchdown catches as well. For Petaway, where do you see him sitting here? Do you think he's going to be doing more or less? What are you expecting out of him?
I think that the sky's the limit for this kid. I think that when you look at the production that Marvin Mims had back in 2020 as a freshman, the 610-yard mark for Jaquez Petaway to get to, that seems a lot more realistic for this upcoming season compared to 9 touchdowns that Marvin scored 3 years ago. But from everything that we've heard, and we've heard a lot of really, really good things about Jaquez Petaway, turning heads since he's been on campus, less than 8 weeks by now. But yeah, I think that it is entirely possible. I predicted it, 2 months ago, Adam. I think that by OU Texas, Jacquez Petaway will be starting for this Oklahoma offense, if not sooner. And so, yeah, 610 yards, I think, is highly doable. 9 touchdowns. That I don't know. I mean, that was one of the really big things about Marvin Mims. We saw all throughout his career as an Oklahoma Sooner, and especially during his freshman campaign, was the deep threat. If Marvin Mims was able to get behind those safeties, make the big plays, the long touchdowns. Jaquez Petaway, who is by all the measurements, is a bigger, stronger, faster athlete than Marvin Mims. We'll just see if he has the ability, especially this early on in his career, if he can have the same impact as Marvin Mims. But yeah, I'm gonna say that the 6'10" mark is reachable, but I don't know if I can see Jaquez Petaway reaching double-digit touchdowns in his freshman season at Oklahoma. If he does, then that spells nothing but good things for Oklahoma as we're trying to forecast this upcoming season.
Yeah, I don't see him reaching either of these benchmarks. Not because I'm down on Petaway, but I know a lot of people are going to say, "Well, Petaway's not hasn't been a part of the program until this summer. He wasn't at spring practices and so forth." And some people
Right.
will say, "Well, neither was Marvin Mims. Spring practice was canceled in 2020, but none of the other receivers on that team had the opportunity to seize position in that spring practice as well. Whereas guys like maybe Jaden Gibson, Gavin Freeman, so on and so forth, and maybe have kind of held on to some of those roles or have a better understanding of what's going on at this point. You also had Charleston Rambo on that 2020 team that early on was taking a lot of the attention away from a Marvin
Yeah.
Mims, for example. So Petaway's not going to necessarily have that. And I think there's just going to be so many other guys that are going to be a little bit more firmly entrenched. I think there's going to be a really large rotation of guys that are going to have opportunities to catch the ball, especially early on in the season. And the
Hmm.
competition's not that great. So I think some guys will shine before we start getting to conference play and we start sorting out of, oh, that was just, G5 competition. Now we're playing some better teams. Maybe player X is not as good and we shorten the rotation. And I think Petaway will take some time to adjust to just college life, college football, so on and so forth. So I'll go a little
Yeah.
bit less there.
I think something else to keep in mind, Adam, and Brent Venables touched on this a week ago at Big 12 Media Days when he was talking about, a season ago, his almost lack of willingness to want to play some of the younger, more talented guys, just because allowing them the opportunity to ease into college football, they're afraid that they don't fully have the grasp of the playbook of all the concepts and the schemes. But looking back at it, he does kind of regret the fact that he didn't get some of those young guys into play, and I don't think he's going to make that same mistake twice. So I think that you're going to see Jaquez Petaway, if he continues to build on everything that we've heard from so far this summer, if he has a good fall camp and he earns that trust of not just his coaches but also from his quarterbacks as well in Arnold and Dylan Gabriel, then yeah, I think it's highly possible that you're going to see a lot of Jaquez Petaway this upcoming fall.
Let's go to our number two guy here, which I think a lot of fans are super excited about, PJ Adebaware. And the best comparison I have, we really haven't had a five-star defensive lineman at OU, especially a defensive end
Nope.
in years and years and decades and decades. So the best comparison I have would probably be Ronnie Perkins. In 2018, he had 8 tackles for loss. He had 5 sacks. I thought it was a pretty impressive freshman campaign for Ronnie Perkins looking back on it. And I actually think that's a pretty good benchmark for PJ. I don't know necessarily that, there's definitely going to be a rotation. There's a lot of new guys in that room here, but what do you think about PJ? Is he going to be a guy that can match or exceed what Ronnie Perkins did?
I think that it's very difficult to forecast that, Adam, obviously because of the influx of talent. Not that we have returning, but also some of the guys that we brought in from the transfer portal. And Brent Venables and Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis. Really seeing that position group, especially out on the edge, as being a true weakness. Oklahoma had a really difficult time last year setting the edge, especially in the run game. So I think when you look at some of the guys on the depth chart right now that are going to be playing out on the perimeter of the defensive line, guys like Rondell Bothroyd, Trace Ford, R. Mason Thomas, Ethan Downs, is this going to be a situation where PJ, it plays sparingly, maybe in situational type football, or is he just simply too good, too freakish of an athlete to keep him off the field, especially in those obvious passing downs, 2nd and long, 3rd and long. So, 8 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, like we saw from, Ronnie Perkins in his freshman campaign. I actually think that's a very attainable goal for PJ if he's able to, put everything together, so quickly as just a true freshman this upcoming season. So, I'm going to say yes, that is attainable. I think that he will achieve both of those numbers.
I think he'll get close. I don't think he'll surpass that. And I think a lot of it does come down to how healthy is Trace Ford. How much is he playing? Is he a situational guy, or is he somebody that this team leans on? But I think you look at Rondell Bothroyd. I think you look at Trace Ford. I think you look at Ethan Downs. I think those are 3 guys that Brent Venables is going to trust considerably to get the job done and soak up a lot of those snaps. And then I think R. Mason Thomas, he's the guy that I'm probably the most high on from this defensive group. And simply because he looked different in the spring. He looked bigger. He looked twitchier. He looked faster than pretty much everybody else out there at that position. Mm-hmm. So, and he's going into his sophomore year. This is where a lot of guys show a lot of growth and potential there. So I just wonder how many snaps a guy like PJ is going to be able to get there. It's not a talent question. It's just how much is he going to be able to say, be put on the field? How much is Brent going to trust him at this point? We'll find out.
Yeah. And I mean, even though that they are playing the same position, on the website right now, Trace Ford, they've got him listed around 257 pounds. And, PJ, they've got him listed right now at about 241. Obviously, we would expect him to be able to carry maybe 245, even 250, obviously with, still 2 more months before season gets here. But, PJ, he's just kind of an anomaly. He's not something that you see every day, especially with the measurements. I mean, this is a kid, 6'4", his arms, his hands hang down, damn near to his knees. So, from a tackle standpoint, trying to block an edge guy, PJ, and, it's been talked about by all the recruiting sites, by all the analysts, all the, people that have played the position at a high level from Oklahoma. This guy's got all the tools, all the intangibles in the world. And it's just a matter of, is the rotation going to allow him to do this? And is the light going to be able to come on for him as a true freshman, at a place like Oklahoma? But, the schedule being as favorable as it is for Oklahoma, it's definitely going to bode well for guys like Petaway and PJ to be able to come in and make an impact right away.
And I will say with PJ, and we'll talk about another defender here in a moment, but the less that PJ has to play, that means the rest of the defense and the defensive end group is considerably better than last year. So
Correct.
if you don't see him on the field, that's not a bad thing necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
It could just be the other guys are filling that void appropriately that you would like to see from your upperclassmen.
Sure.
Let's flip sides over to the offense for a moment here. Let's talk Jackson Arnold. Now, I know some people will say, yeah, he should throw for 3,000 yards and 30 touchdowns because he should be the starter. But as of right now, the expectation, whether you agree with it or not, is that Dillon Gabriel is the starter. Dillon Gabriel, this is his team. He's not coming off that field. He's not going to relinquish that starting role unless he is injured. So let's look at that from that lens and that perspective. I thought about going with Kyler Murray in his backup year in 2017 as a comparison. I didn't think that was fair, though, because Kyler Murray at that point would have been in his fourth year of college, so I didn't think that was
Sure.
fair. Let's look at Justin Fields, a little bit of curveball, guy that didn't play for OU, but was in a similar role. He was a five-star quarterback, went to Georgia in 2018, played some spot duty here and there, had 328 yards, 4 touchdowns through the air, and then on the ground, 12 rushes for 42 yards and 4 touchdowns. So a guy that they brought in that 2018 season to play a little bit of curveball, changeup, whatever you want to call it. Do you think Jackson Arnold has a similar stat line to this?
Yes, I think he will have a very similar stat line, if not a more impressive stat line from a passing yardage standpoint. I don't expect him to, have 4 rushing touchdowns this year, and obviously this is all predicated upon the fact that Dillon Gabriel stays healthy all season long. But one of the things that I do think that Oklahoma is going to be able to do, again, we always go back to the schedule. You open up with Arkansas State, SMU, Tulsa, being your first 3 games. I think that we're going to have an opportunity to see Jackson Arnold in at least 2 of those first 3 matchups. Obviously, if Oklahoma plays well and they take care of business, because I think that going into this season, obviously you didn't have the luxury of having a true trustworthy backup quarterback a year ago, that could basically allow Jeff Lebby to, take the or again, let me rephrase this, give Dillon Gabriel the full, access, the full reins to this playbook to truly do, what Dillon Gabriel does so well. Jeff Lebby had to kind of pull back a little bit last year because he didn't trust that the second guy, whether it was General Booty, Davis Bevel, would be able to go out there and execute this offense at a high level to give Oklahoma the ability to win football games. But I think that going into this season with Jackson Arnold, I think he's more talented. He's got the better arm than Dillon Gabriel, who, as good as he is, just doesn't have the same physical tools, the same type of ceiling that Jackson Arnold does. And I think that you're going to see, obviously Oklahoma plays well. I think you're going to see Jackson Arnold, at least in 2 or 3 of these opening games before we get to Cincinnati. And, that's going to bode well for Oklahoma because once you get further into the season, then you obviously want to have Jackson Arnold ready and confident and willing to go, obviously, if his number's called.
Yeah, I agree. And I would really like to see Jackson Arnold just thrown into the game on a random second quarter drive against Arkansas State. I would love to see him in those types of situations rather than just, hey, we're up 56-0. Go ahead and, hand the ball off 30 times to end the game. I would like to see him actually have a little bit of pressure early on, especially against these teams that you're not super worried about competition-wise. And there should be plenty of blowouts throughout the rest of the schedule too. Like even in the Big 12, there should be a game or two where you blow out Iowa State or you blow out Cincinnati or whoever. There should be opportunities for Jackson Arnold to put up some significant stats. I think he's one that hopefully, like last year, we didn't see Bevel do anything as a backup. He just handed the ball off. We saw General Booty came in against, I think it was TCU, and he handed the ball off. Nick Evers threw 1 pass, was never allowed to see the field again. But I would like to see him actually have the opportunity to run the offense, even if it's, high percentage, swing passes, screens, things like that are not running up the score necessarily, but get him in rhythm, get him throw passes.
On the flip side of that, though, Adam, if you're Brent Venables or Jeff Lebby, do you really want to trot Jackson Arnold out there, second game of the year against SMU, and he goes 7 of 8 for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns? Because then moving forward, anytime Dillon Gabriel throws an interception or makes a mistake, then you're going to have a portion of the fan base, particularly the student section at home, that's the Jackson Arnold, chants are automatically going to start happening. And that thought's going to be in the back of Oklahoma's minds. Like, we've seen the small sample size from Jackson, give us more than what we've seen from, just 1 or 2 performances. So something to keep in mind as well. Obviously, we do not want a repeat of Caleb Williams, Spencer Rattler, like we saw 3 seasons ago.
I think you do it anyway and just have confidence in Dillon Gabriel because I think he's a guy you can be confident in. I mean, the dude threw was it 4 or 6 interceptions all last year? Like, it wasn't that many. The guy takes care of the ball. Like, he's not going to get pulled for poor performance. Yeah, he'll miss a throw here or there, and everyone will groan and go, oh, we're off the field on 3rd and 10. But you know what? I think this year it won't matter as much because we won't be playing in nearly as many one-possession games. So one critical throw like that just won't make as much difference.
Sure.
Let's jump back to the defensive side of the ball. Our final player that we're going to highlight tonight, Peyton Bowen, a guy that everyone's super pumped about. It looks like he may have the best opportunity at playing time outside of perhaps Petaway, but a guy that's been here in the spring. I think the best comparison here is Tony Jefferson. Again, not a style comparison whatsoever. It's just, hey, here's what Tony Jefferson did in his freshman year. 65 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions. Do you think something like that is realistic for Bowen to have in his first year in Norman?
I think that it is, but also at the same time, Adam, I think it's predicated upon how much playing time, how big of a role is Peyton Bowen going to have in the back end of the secondary? Obviously, there's 4 guys that are on campus right now that have either played a lot more college football, like a Reggie Pearson who transferred in from Texas Tech, or 3 guys that already have a year in the system under Brent Venables, have already played multiple years of college football, like a Billy Bowman, a Robert Spears Jennings, Key Lawrence, just to kind of round out the back half of that defense. I think that he's a 5-star for a reason. There's a reason why so many, programs were, vying for this kid's services all the way up until the very last moment, with Oklahoma and Oregon and Alabama, so on and so forth. But I think that this is going to be a situation. The fact that, again, it goes back to the competitive depth. I think that Brent Venables and, Ted Roof and, Brandon Hall are going to feel so much more comfortable about the guys that they've got in the room, the fact that they're going to be able to trust those guys to, sub in for Billy Bowman on a series here and there. I think that you're going to see a lot more opportunities for a guy like Peyton Bowen to come in. I'm not sure he's going to make 65 tackles on the year like we saw from Tony Jefferson, but if you were telling me that over the course of a 13, 14-game season, Peyton Bowen, who has just freakishly good ball skills, he's going to pick off a couple of passes, yeah, I think that's highly possible, and I would expect that from 22 this fall.
I agree with you there. I think 2 interceptions or more is realistic there. I think he could create some highlight plays. We just put out a big highlight video. It's linked in our show notes on the podcast, so check that out on YouTube. Some of the best turnovers in Sooner history. Brent Venables liked the tweet that we tweeted out. So it's good turnovers. It's good content. So if you haven't seen that video, click on that link at the top of the show notes there. But yeah, I think 2 or more interceptions, maybe some fumble recoveries, I think definitely are possible. I think more like 50 tackles is probably more realistic there. I'm a big fan of Reggie Pearson. I think he's kind of got that heat-seeking missile mentality coming downhill in the run game. So I think he'll turn some heads early in the season, but I think eventually he gives way and cedes a lot more playing time to Peyton Bowen as the season continues, because as he figures things out, you're not going to be able to keep that talent off the field. I'm trying to think, is there anyone else? Key Lawrence is out there. I think he'll probably back up Billy Bowman, but is there anyone else maybe that I'm not remembering that might take snaps away from Peyton Bowen?
I don't know. I mean, Robert Spears Jennings is one. Kind of feels like he's the guy that's always forgotten about.
Jaden Rowe or something like that.
Jaden Rowe. I mean, Kendall Dolby's a guy. I know that they've kind of been working him primarily at corner right now, but obviously as the season progresses, he's too good of an athlete to at least not try to get him as one of those 5 defensive backs on the field. But yeah, I just think that obviously we got a small taste of it in the spring game. Obviously, he picked off a pass from Dylan Gabriel down the field. Yeah, I think that it's highly possible that Peyton Bowen's going to have an impact that many fans are going to be excited about this kid.